So today we'll be looking at top privacy management software applications, and here are a few. So the top four that we would recommend are OneTrust, TrustArc, Collibra, BigID. So OneTrust, as we are aware, is a data governance tool. It helps with compliance purposes in that you can do everything that concerns your role as a data privacy manager on the application. TrustArc is also a data governance tool, does the same thing that OneTrust does. The only difference between OneTrust and TrustArc is that OneTrust has free versions. However, TrustArc is entirely a paid version. So they do not have any free version for you to try out. You are either paying for their services from the onset or not. So that's the difference between OneTrust and TrustArc. The next software application that can be used for privacy management is Collibra. So Collibra is used mostly for cookie consent management. And if you remember, I explained cookie consent management as that application solution that stores all of the content that's been gotten from websites when you click on I accept cookies. So this privacy management software application is used for that purpose. Then BigID is entirely a privacy management software application too. It is used for data compliance and data governance purpose, same as OneTrust. So these are the four top data governance or data privacy tools, software applications that we recommend to aid your role as a data privacy manager. So roles that you can apply for upon completion of this course. As a data privacy specialist, you'll be in charge of managing the day-to-day compliance tasks, preparing documentations, ensuring that members of the organization are compliant, carrying out data protection impact assessments on behalf of the organization, interfacing with top management and giving them reports on the data protection stance of the organization, conducting awareness and training sessions, measuring the effectiveness of the program, also looking at applicable regulations and legislations that apply to your industry and to your organization. So these are the roles of a data privacy specialist. Same applies to a data privacy manager. So you'll be doing data inventory, data mapping, information classification, and training and awareness, monitoring the compliance level of employees of the organization, and providing solutions, giving recommendations to top management on recommended controls or supplementary security controls that you feel that they need to implement in the organization. Data privacy analyst. A data privacy analyst builds solutions and automated controls that supports the organization's privacy infrastructure. So for people that are more technically inclined, this rule applies more to them. So they build solutions. So all of these solutions that we discussed previously, the whole Colibra and all of that, a data privacy analyst or a data privacy technician is usually employed for this purpose of building solutions and automation technologies or automation tools that make data protection easier or make data privacy implementation in the organization simplified, more simplified. A data protection officer would also carry out the role of a data privacy manager, the whole education, awareness, and training, monitoring data protection actions, keeping records, being the go between the employees and top management, providing recommendations to top management, conducting data mapping, carrying out data protection impact assessments, supervising the whole program, the privacy program of the organization, and ensuring that the personal data collected by the organization is safely stored and secured. So a data and technology policy analyst, what you are solely responsible in doing is just creating documents in alignment with standard processes and regulations guiding that organization. So all you're just coming to do is just creating policies from scratch. So if we say we need this document, your role as a policy analyst is to create that policy in alignment with whatsoever regulation that governs that organization. Conducting privacy awareness and training. So as a data protection officer, a data privacy manager, or whatsoever role that carries all of these job descriptions, you are supposed to carry out privacy awareness and training sessions for members of staff. So you have to select topics that border around data protection. You are also to train staffs on privacy in the workspace, how they are supposed to ensure that the data that they're in charge of or that the data that they collect is adequately protected in accordance with the rules that have been set and the acceptable use policy of the organization. So now, we would usually advise that awareness and training sessions should hold at a minimum quarterly. However, you are also obligated to send out email advisories to employees every month. So these email advisories should contain tips or tips on how to protect the data. So examples of tips that you can send out to employees is always lock your screen. Another example is do not put your password in clear sights of people. So do not write your passwords down or put it as a stick on your work, around your workstation. Then also, when you are at home or doing remote working, you have to ensure that the VPN that you use to connect to the organization's network is the secured one, is the one recommended or provided for by the organization. Other security tips would be classifying emails that you send out to members of staff. So based on the sensitivity of the email, you either classify it as public, internal, restricted, or confidential. So another data protection or data privacy tip that would usually send out is ensuring that you back up regular backups and restricting access controls to only members of your unit. And where you are to do information transfer to organization outside your country or outside the country of that organization, you are to use secure transport layer methods. So examples will be TLS 1.2 or transferring over HTTPS, which is the secure version of HTTP, or even transferring over SSL. So these are examples of email advisories that we send out monthly to staff. However, when you then want to do privacy awareness, which is a more general training session where every member of staff either comes into a meeting or you do it virtually. Examples of topics that you can train on would be doing a whole overview of the CCPA or doing a whole overview of the CPRA and what they expect from the organization. You would also be informing them of how you can come to their unit at any time to request for information as regards how they store personal data. Another example of topics that you can assess or carry out awareness on is how to back up data or how to ensure that information that they are privy to does not go out reminding them of the fact that they signed a confidential agreement or an NDA and how if they are in breach, they can be sued for what they are worth. So these are just reminders, quarterly reminders on their duties and obligations to the organization and the organization's obligation to the laws and regulations and legislations of the land. So that's generally what privacy awareness training is all about. So after you've fully implemented a privacy program, the next best thing you're supposed to do is to measure the effectiveness of the privacy program. So how do you do this? You have to have metrics in place. So you do this by creating key performance indicators. So for example, our privacy objective can be that we want all our staffs to be 100% security conscious of the information that they collect. So a KPI that we can use to measure the effectiveness of that is after we've carried out awareness session, maybe quarterly, we can then send out performance evaluation tests for them to do. And then based on the score, so the score can be if every employee gets 60%, we then know that we've passed the information across successfully. It means that everybody then understands what is expected of them as regards what was taught. So that can be your performance metrics, 80% in performance evaluation after awareness session has been held. Another KPI that can be used is, we can say we want to improve the resilience of our information, of our data protection mechanisms and information assets. And a key performance indicator that you can use to measure that can be regular backups. So your definition of regular backups can be that we will conduct regular backups. It means that a memo is going out to all staffs that they are to back up every information on their system every day. So the whole essence of resilience is so that if a breach occurs or a ransomware attack comes to the organization, they can easily back up the previous day's job and continue work like nothing happened. So that's a way to be resilient. And the measurement metrics is every staff should back up before they leave. So you can also enforce an automatic way of doing it, setting rules in your OneDrive or SharePoint or Google Drive to ensure that after the day's job, all information on the individual laptops of every person in the organization is backed up automatically. So these are examples of creating a measurable privacy program and using metrics, or better still, key performance indicators to ensure that the measurements that you've put in place are effective. And you are not to just use general metrics, you have to ensure that they are specific. So the more specific they are, the more measurable they can be. Because if they are then specific, you then know if what you are doing or the privacy program that you've implemented are then very effective. So as regards governance, where we spoke about creating a privacy team and ensuring that all team leads are in the privacy team, a way that you can measure the effectiveness of the governance unit is looking at the frequency of privacy policy reviews. So how often is the organization or is the DPO expected to update and review the policies that have been created and put in place? So we would usually advise that at a minimum, you're supposed to review and update your privacy policies annually. So that's because the DPO might have other functions going on for him. But some organizations, they solely just employ a DPO. And once that's your core function, then your own frequency of reviewing privacy policies might be maybe quarterly or biannually. So these are ways to measure if the DPO is even effective in the first place, or if the privacy team that you set up is also effective. Because in the bid of reviewing privacy policies, you then know if this information or if these rules that you've put in place are now outdated, so that you then change it and say, okay, for example, at first we said backup should be done monthly, but now we feel that that is no longer effective. So we are recommending that the backup policy be changed from monthly to daily. So that's where privacy policy review would come in. Then percentage of personal data accounted for through data classification. So you can say we want to measure the effectiveness of our privacy team by seeing how many people are complying with classifying emails or information that is sent out from our organization. So the MD might be monitoring that compliance, looking at how many people name or classify the information sent out, or even the team leads can be the one monitoring, saying maybe if 50% of the staff, which is quite low, or if 70% of the staff can abide by information classification policy, then I feel that the DPO is doing a good job. Then reduction in time to report. So another way you can measure the effectiveness of the privacy team is when an incident occurs, how quick or how soon can a member of staff reach them so that they can start to eradicate and contain the incident. So that's another metrics that can be used to measure the effectiveness of the privacy team and the DPO. And reduction in time to notify either the supervisory authorities, the DPA, or the data subject when an incident occurs. As regards regulatory compliance, metrics that can be used is frequency of the review of current regulations. So you can say, let's subscribe this platform that gives out daily news on new regulations and new updates to the CPRA. You can then put a metrics around saying every 3 years we would review our compliance to the CPRA or the CCPA, which is quite fun. At a minimum, it's supposed to be yearly. So you can then say every year we'll be certifying to the CPRA certification or to ISO 27701 certification, so that we can then monitor our compliance to the local legislation. Then number of external regulatory obligations in scope. So how are we following through? It's what the CPA and CPRA is asking of us. How effective or how compliant are we? So carrying out external certifications is a way to test your level of compliance. And how soon can we integrate new regulations into our existing privacy program? So these are ways that you can measure the effectiveness of your privacy program. If it takes you 6 months to integrate, then you know that you have to tweak 1 or 2 things, how you are implementing the privacy program to ensure that at a minimum 3 months, you should be able to fully integrate new regulations to your existing business program or business process. Data processing and handling. So examples of metrics that you can use to measure how you process and handle data would be, do we have technologies that can help us automatically encrypt and pseudonymize personal data that we collect? Do we have solutions that can help us log and aid with audit trails? So example, a SIM solution is something that can aid with monitoring audit trails and logging of events. Personal data putting a percentage as to how effective the data retention periods we have put in place, or how business units are complying with the data retention periods that have been put in place, and how many data, what's the percentage of data currently classified and unclassified. Data subject requests. So a way you can measure is how many data subject requests have we received. Maybe you can say monthly, quarterly, or yearly. So if you put in place quarterly measures, it means that if this quarter you got 32 data subject requests, by next quarter we should be looking at least 30 data subject requests. That's how you then know if your privacy controls are actually being effective. And then what's the average time to respond to data subject access requests? I feel like every quarter or every month or yearly, whichever measurement metrics you choose to use, it should be reducing. It should get better and not get worse. If at a minimum it's not even getting better, at least it should not depreciate. Then number of DS data subject access requests responded to and unresponded to. So you can also measure the effectiveness of your data subject request procedure by the number of data subject access requests that were responded to successfully and the ones that were not responded to, whereby you then tell them that they have a right to complain to data protection authorities. Privacy by design, you can measure your privacy by design by the percentage of projects that include privacy by design during the planning phase. So how many projects did you start, or how many applications did you build and that you took or that you had privacy by design in mind while planning for it? What's the percentage of processes within your organization that include privacy by design? And what's the percentage of high-risk projects that include privacy by design in the planning phase? So a way you can measure the effectiveness of your notice and consent privacy controls is by putting in place percentage of data collection processes that do not capture consent. So all those points that you collect personal data on your website, on your mobile application, when people fill forms, onboarding process, during recruitment process, do you have consent, or do you have consent included at each personal data collection point? Do you have, if you tick this box, you consent to us using, or do you have a consent to and then they sign? So the percentage of data collection processes that capture consent at every personal data collection point is a way for you to measure the effectiveness of your notices and consent controls. And then the average time you respond to a data subject's request to withdraw their consent can also be a means of measuring the effectiveness of that privacy control. Then incident response. How can you measure the effectiveness of your incident response control? So what's the average cost of an incident? How much would it cost an organization if an incident occurs? And of course, it should get better. It should not move from $30 million this month or this quarter to $60 million the next quarter. That means the privacy controls are not effective. Then number of incidents tracked. So how easy was it for you to quickly detect an incident before it occurs? Then mean time to initiate incident response. How effective, how quick can you reach the incident response team when you suspect an incident is about to occur? Mean time to complete. How soon can the incident response team close out on an incident that has occurred? So these are metrics that you can use. So you collect it this quarter, you collect it the next quarter, you collect it for 4 quarters, and then by the end of the year, you are then looking at it. I think we got better, or I think we got worse. I think we should change this. I think we should not change this. I think that this is effective enough, but we need to work on this. So these are ways to just put in place KPIs or measurement metrics to know the effectiveness of your privacy control. So privacy risk assessment, PIA, DPIA, PRA, whichever it is. A way to measure it is what's the number of completed privacy risk assessments. So when you go to each unit, how many units were able to effectively fill out privacy risk assessment? Frequency, did you carry out the PIAs quarterly, monthly, yearly? Monthly will be too much though. Quarterly, biannually, yearly. How frequently did you need to perform a DPIA based on the new processes or based on the systematic monitoring of publicly accessible areas, based on your core activities? How often did you have to carry out DPIAs? And then what was the privacy risk score after you were done for each unit? Then have to compare so that you then know what kind of security controls or privacy controls you have to put in that department to reduce it and mitigate and ensure that the privacy posture of that unit or business process is reduced and in alignment with the business and privacy objective of the organization. Information security. So what's the percentage of privacy incidents that were notified both to supervisory authorities and data subjects? Then what is the percentage of data address covered by security controls? So data that you store that you are not transmitting or using actively, that is just stored maybe in your archive records or on the cloud. What is the security controls that you've put in place to ensure that they are secured? Then what is the security controls that you also put in place to ensure that data that you are transmitting or actively using are secured? Then awareness and training. So you can say what's the number of days between onboarding and completing of privacy training. So how many days will it take you to fully induct new employees to ensuring that they understand what your privacy program is all about? Then how many privacy personnel, how many members of your privacy team have privacy certification? Because the more aware or the more international certifications or awareness that they have, the more they are better equipped to carry out privacy programs in the organization. Then the percentage of staff receiving privacy training. So how many members of staff actually attend the awareness training sessions that you put in place? Is it 100% of the workforce, or is it 80% that consistently attend? And out of this 80%, how many of them are from each business process unit? And in these business process units that do not actively attend, how effective are their processes in ensuring that the data collected in that unit is adequately protected? So these are ways to measure. And then frequency of in-house privacy training programs. So do you conduct quarterly trainings? Do you think that quarterly trainings are sufficient? Or do you think that biannual trainings are more effective because people don't then get bored of hearing the same thing? Or do you feel like it's better to even conduct it monthly so that it sinks into employees what you are requesting of them? So what's the effectiveness of the frequency of the privacy trainings that you carry out in your organization? Then program management. So how can you then overall measure the program? So out of the KPIs that you set, how many KPIs were 100% met? How many KPIs did you lay down that directly aligns with the business objective of the organization? How often does management sit down with the privacy team to review the privacy program that is being implemented? And how often do they require a breakdown? Or I'm sorry, how often do the privacy team meet to also ensure that the privacy program that they've implemented is effective? So these are just ways to measure. So after you've done all of these metrics and all of that, the management team would then be expecting that you deliver a privacy program report to them, showing them what you've learned so far, your your recommended controls, the effectiveness of the metrics that you've put, the KPIs that you think need to be better improved on the next year, the tools that you think should be onboarded to help with data governance compliance, the certifications or certification bodies that you think members of privacy team should write, the certification body that you think the organization should be compliant to or should do a certification program to, so as to get the stamp with the seal. What are the regulatory requirements? So these are all the things that should be included in your data privacy program, which you'll be sending out to top management. And who should participate in creating a data privacy program report? The privacy officer, the data privacy manager, the data privacy analyst, whatsoever role it is, the privacy manager, the DPO, whatsoever name is called in the organization, that person should be involved in actively preparing the reports. The core privacy privacy team, which I said were the marketing units, the legal units, the HR units, the customer delivery units, the customer service or customer support unit, whichever is called. These are the 4 core privacy members. The 4 core members of the privacy team, which should also be actively involved in the writing of the privacy program report, and then the ISMS manager, information security manager or a representative from information technology units. So we have come to the end of the privacy program.